Hey guys, we're property number 1 for the $1 million flipping challenge. You know, every single property, you're gonna learn a lesson. On this one, it's understanding area analysis. What do I mean? Well, understanding, is this an A area, meaning affluent? Is this a B, meaning bread and butter? Is this a C, which is a challenging area, or C minus, where there are some economic issues that affect the area, or it's a D, meaning disaster, which we stay out of. So this property is going to be what I would call a C minus area, meaning there's a lot of properties here for rentals. And this is an area where there are going to be some economic challenges that you're going to have to face as you own the property for long term. So every single time, as I walk you through the properties over the next 15, 16 properties for this entire year, what you're going to learn is not only you're going to see the properties that I'm flipping, not only the properties other people are flipping, but every single time, what you want to look at is, what can I learn from it? What do I take away from this particular property? And on this one, it's all about understanding area analysis, because that's one of the key things. If you want to flip, you want to make a lot of money, you have to understand area analysis. Okay, so we're back at the office, and before we go into the numbers for Richmond Park, what is really important is to understand, how do you really pick areas for flipping? A lot of times people will say, oh my God, I'm gonna start getting into real estate, or I just got into real estate, I found a property and I'm gonna go flip it. See, a lot of it, if you truly wanna be that $1 million flipper, meaning you truly wanna build a business, you wanna do flips this year, and you really wanna be profitable, you have to start understanding, how do I do area selection? What are the things I have to think about? What are the types of properties? So quickly on my computer, I'm gonna show you, then we'll go quickly through Zillow. We're going to look at the amount of inventory, meaning how many properties are competing with me. Is this an area, even if I may have found a property, right? Just because you found a great property doesn't mean you have to flip it. Sometimes you're better off just wholesaling the property, and you may not want to flip it, because what if there's a lot of inventory sitting on the market? Do you want to get stuck with the property? The whole point of flipping a property is that we buy it, we rehab it, and we are going to sell it, resell it for an extraordinary profit. That's how you get to be a $1 million flipper. So let's switch to the screen, and I'm going to show you guys how we kind of analyze the area quickly, how we look at the comps, how we look at the ARV before we decide, yes, this is a good property. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So the very first thing, and it doesn't really matter what part of the country you're in, the very first thing what you have to think about is, number one, where's the property located? So I have it open in MapQuest or Google Maps, wherever you want to open it, right? And you're going to look at geographically, where are you? So in this case, this particular property happens to be in the south part of Chicago, south suburbs. Now, south side flips, meaning city of Chicago south side, will be very different than south suburbs. So that becomes very, very important. When we think about Chicagoland area, we know the north part of the city or the northwest part of the city, that's more of the expensive part of the city. When we start getting into the southern suburbs, this is going to be a lot more blue collar type of suburbs, where the jobs, the income demographics is going to be a little bit different. So you're going to call it, maybe some people may call it a workforce neighborhood, some people may call it a working class neighborhood, because that's going to dictate what is going to be your tenant pool. Meaning, am I going to flip this property? Am I going to rent this property? How am I going to decide that? And then, is the market today, in today's economy, does the market lend itself for me to be able to flip the property quickly and make a great profit? So first, geography of where you are is going to be important. So if I'm in Florida and I'm going to flip a condo, this is important, because how much competition is on the market? Even if I'm getting a condo relatively really cheap, is it really cheap? If there are 100, 150 condos competing, should you really be buying that property? So that the market research becomes critical. So where do I do the market research? Well, a very easy place that everybody has access to. You don't need MLS, you don't need anything. You go to Zillow, exactly like I'm on, or if you are in states like non-disclosure states like Texas, some other places where they don't disclose the back-end value, in those states, you're going to use Redfin. So I'm going to first go to Zillow, and I'm going to look at, okay, how many properties are available in Richmond Park. So if I go here and I go to for sale, and I'm going to make sure that I only have the houses turned on, because I don't want to. I'm not going to be competing with condos. Now I'm going to look at, okay, what are the properties? Then you can start from low to high over here, or you can start from high to low. Either one is okay. There's no such thing as right or wrong. But I'm going to look at, and what I'm trying to do is I'm going to start looking at, okay, where is this property located in Richmond Park? Is it a 3-bedroom? Is it a 1-bedroom? Excuse me, 1-bathroom? What is the property, and what is the square footage? See, what it lets me do is it lets me find out, okay, what are the types of properties that are selling, and then what are they selling for? Also, it'll tell me, okay, how long has this property been on the market? What I'm trying to do is, in my mind, I'm trying to come up with what is the absorption rate in a given area. How many properties are under contract? How many properties are right now available for sale? And that becomes really, really important. So if I put for souls, and I think I'm going to sell the property for, let's just say, 200,000. Right? How many properties have sold between, say, 180 to 220, and how many bedrooms are they? Are they 3 bedrooms? Are they 4 bedrooms? What do they look like? Right? So I'm going to start looking at those properties, and I'm going to start looking at geographically. Have they sold in the north part of Richmond Park? Have they sold in the south part of Richmond Park? Which pocket of town is better? See, that goes a little bit beyond just coming up with the ARV. What you're doing is you're doing a study of the area. If there's a ton of properties that are on the market and nothing is moving, then do you really want to go and sell properties in that particular area? Is that really going to help you sell a property? So that becomes really, really important for you to look at. And in Zillow as well as in Redfin, there are going to be a bunch of choices. And I would just do the search based on a price range, right? So if I think I'm going to bring my property back on the market around, let's just say 190 to 225, then that's the price range I'm going to look at. Hey, how many properties are active? How many properties are under contract, and how many properties have sold? So let's just say in that price range, there are 6 properties that are active. Out of those, there's one property that's completely rehabbed, completely mint condition, that's been redone, like your property is going to be if you're flipping a property. And then you have 18 properties that are under contract. What does that tell you? Hey, there's only 4 or 5 properties available, 18 under contract. There were 40, 50 sales. That tells you it's a very active market. Whenever we're looking at a market like Richmond Park, see, this is a working class neighborhood. And so in that market, you're going to have a lot of rentals. You're going to have a lot of properties. But if I'm going to own a property and I'm deciding whether I should flip it, whether I should rent it, that's the first kind of study I'm going to do of the market, where if I rent the property, who's going to be my tenant? Am I going to find a lot of Section 8 or housing voucher tenants? Is that the tenant pool that I want? What is my rent collection going to be? Because see, if I'm going to own properties generally, so when I look at the area, I'm going to want to own more properties in this area called Frankfurt, because this is an area which I would call a BB plus area. This is not a CC minus area. So you have A, which is aspirational affluent. Next to it generally, right, are going to be areas that are more B, which I like to call them bread and butter. C areas are going to be areas that are going to be challenging, we call those, right? And in challenging areas, your price range is going to be a little bit low. That means the income in that area is going to be a little bit lower. And then D are going to be disaster areas, right? Those are areas that are very high crime, really some negative economic factors that are driving those areas. So extremely poor areas that don't have a chance of going up in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I always completely stay out of those. We invest in A's, B's, and C's. And everybody wants to do flips in A areas. Who doesn't? But guess what? You're not going to make big margins in those areas relative to what you sell the property for. So that's the study I'm going to do. And this doesn't change if you are anywhere else. Let's just say if hypothetically, if I was in Tampa, what would I do? I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to that particular part of town and start looking at what part of town is that. How is the sales in that area? How many properties am I competing with? How many properties are under contract? And how many properties sold in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months? If the area is moving quickly, you know it's a good area for a flip. So once I've done that, and this also, it's like, guys, knowing your inventory, right? Knowing the inventory becomes more important. And a lot of times, whenever people are flipping properties, the reason they struggle with it is they don't understand the market like the back of their hand. And if you don't understand your market like the back of your hand, how are you going to be an expert flipper in that area? So this becomes really, really critical. So anytime we go into even any of the south suburbs, so our office happens to be up in an area which is close to Oak Brook. So that's a really nice A area. And it's very hard to find a lot of deals in that particular area. But guess what? A little bit east of it, a little bit north of it, a little bit south of it, it's more B and C pockets. It's much easier to find distress in those areas. It's much easier to find foreclosures, easier, and you don't have as much competition because you have more deals available, and the deal margins relative to the value I'm going to sell it for are very, very high. So now, having said all of that, now let's go and we'll look at the numbers on this particular property, what I bought it for, how I bought it, and what we fixed it for, and finally, most importantly, how much do we make? How close do we get to our $1 million challenge, and how many properties is it going to take to get to that million number? So let's go. So before I get into the numbers on this property in Richmond Park, we need to find out where did we source the property from? Well, this was a property that was a high equity property, and it was a property that was an absentee owner. So whenever you're looking for properties, you can look for properties on the MLS, or you can look for properties off market. At a later point during this entire series of the $1 Million Challenge, we're going to talk about different methods of finding properties. So this property came from what we called is the Deal Beast. It's dealbeast.com, and we found the property there. That's a database of all the properties that have high equity, the properties that are going to foreclosure, properties that are probates, and anybody can get access to that particular system. So we did a mailing to absentee owners with high equity, and that's how I found the property. The purchase price on this property was $65,000. Rehab on the property was $59,000. Finance charges about $12,500. Sales cost was about $13,000, and other miscellaneous costs like taxes, insurance, utilities, that was about $7,000. So that's a total of $156,000 was the total cost of owning the property, rehab, and all the related costs, including sales. So when we sell it, what is the ideal profit? What do we call that term? A home run deal. And it's very specific. So it's 20% of the ARV in 6 months, or the rehab amount, whichever one is greater. So let me give you an example. If I'm selling a property for $200,000, in 6 months, I want to make 20%. 20% of $200,000 would be $40,000, or the rehab amount. So if the rehab amount is $35,000, I'm happy with a profit more than 40 or more profit, I'm happy. But what if the rehab amount is 50, 60? Then I want to make a minimum of the rehab amount, because that's where we're putting in a lot of time and effort is in doing the rehab. So on this particular property, I sold the property for $225,000. So, and the rehab was $59,000. So if I'm selling a property for $225,000, well, what is 20% of $225? About $45,000. So I would be really happy. But guess what happened to the rehab? The rehab was $59,000. In the end, I made a profit. After selling the property for $225,000, I made a profit of $69,000. So by any metrics, guys, this is a home run. We did more than 20%, and we exceeded the rehab amount. So even though it took a little bit longer than 6 months, wanted to get it done in 6 months, but guess what? In reality, I made a $69,000 profit, and that's pretty close to the average profit I want to hit for my $1 million challenge. Because remember, that's the goal for this year, and it's not just about me. It's about you. What did you learn from this particular example that we shared with you? We talked about area analysis. We talked about how to find areas that are moving, how to look at the sales, how to look at the properties that are available. Having said that, please make sure you share, you like, and talk to you soon on property number 2.